for Impact.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brace for Impact. Another episode here talking all things Impact Wrestling. As always, live from No Sale Studios. I'm the Ace of the Tavern, Acefield Retro. And as always, here, joined by @Mullet.mania, the Kentucky Waterfall himself, Colton. What's up, dude?
What's going on, man? Damn, just reeling off that episode of Impact on Access this week, man. We're two weeks out from Slammiversary and shit's heating up.
Yeah, and we are on the Go Home show for the Down Under Tour in Australia. Some great stuff this weekend. So paired with Money in the Bank coming up this weekend and some other great wrestling. We also have Impact to talk about, and we're going to preview those shows. We're going to talk about Slammiversary, the card that's coming to shape, and we're going to talk, of course, about Impact on Access, everything going on. What a great show, as you mentioned, man. Can pack a lot of storytelling and very enjoyable watch.
Yeah, man. It's like we said, we've said it again and again. Impact is just a consistent pro wrestling product and has been probably the most consistent pro wrestling product that in the last 2 or 3 years, man. It is obviously a formula, but it works so well. I love the flow of the show. It's a great mix of backstage segments, great in-ring stuff, and then always surprises every week.
Yeah, and we were talking about this off air, and we tried to limit the conversation over there because we want to make sure that we keep everything pretty much reactionary, since you and I are consuming the show right before this, jumping on, having a conversation. But I mentioned in the group chat when we were talking about Dynamite last night, I think we saw the effects of Jimmy Jacobs as a producer on the AW side last night, because I think a lot what we saw in Dynamite is what we see. You mentioned formula, the things we're seeing on a weekly basis Impact that really make the backstage area, the in-ring storytelling dynamic, because we see things happen all over the arena, whether it's in the back, it's in the parking lot, it's in the bowels of the arena. Impact kind of makes the universe of Impact immersive. And they do so much, and a lot of times with so little, because these are tape settings here. And we talked about the downfall of doing tape settings and taping in advance on Ring of Honor and other shows. But this feels, even though it's not live, it feels as immersive as it potentially could be.
Yeah, man, Impact does a really good job of it. I mean, I've been to some Impact shows that have been TV tapings, and I think they've got a good loyal fan base there in Atlanta at Center Stage that tends to show up. And I will say the production staff at Impact does a really good job of riling the crowd up and getting people hyped for segments. And yeah, I mean, it's hard. You wouldn't know we wouldn't know it was taped if they didn't tell you, going into it. If you were eyes on the product for the first time watching this, I would have no idea it was taped without, obviously knowing there's no live, moniker up the top right or anything in the screen. But yeah, they do a very good job to kind of set themselves apart.
Yeah, needless to say, a lot of promotions could learn a lot from Impact Wrestling, and the stuff that Ring of Honor is trying to do on their side, taping in bulk and all that. They should just kind of use a little bit from the formula on the Impact side. And I think they're doing that by cherry picking Jimmy Jacobs into their fold and maybe utilizing him for Dynamite and maybe Ring of Honor down the line, because like we said, I mean, they do so much with the limited resources they have, and they're really thriving in the number 3 spot. I mean, I look forward to this every week, dude. This is such a good time to talk about wrestling, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it's a breath of fresh air every week.
So shout out to Tyson in the chat. Thank you for watching here. We are live talking on Brace for Impact, directly following Impact on Access. So if you missed the episode, we'll catch you up. But we're going to talk, we have to preview the things coming up this weekend. And like I said, the Down Under Tour is quickly approaching. Tomorrow we'll be talking all things about the Australia Tour. It's happening 5 a.m. But we'll preview all that stuff here with the news section, as we call it, The Insight.
The Insight.
All right, here we are at The Insight. It's our news section here. I want to just talk about the Slammiversary card that you referenced before, July 15th, Windsor, Ontario. Card starting to take a little bit more shape, and we're having the Impact Tag Team Championships on the line here. Chris Bay and Ace Austin are going to be defending their titles in a 4-way match against Moose and Brian Myers, Rich Swann, and Sami Callihan, and Subculture's Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews. So this is the tag titles we knew would be defended by ABC here. What are your thoughts on this being a 4-way match? And this has potential to steal the show, does it not?
Absolutely, man. This is going to be a banger. I mean, I love Chris Bay and Ace Austin. I had opportunity to see these guys live multiple times. They do incredible work. And they're going to make magic in any match they are against another tag team, but let alone going up against another 3 tag teams of incredibly talented wrestlers. Man, I mean, this like you said, potential to steal the show for sure. This is going to be pandemonium, to say the least.
So we saw this was announced on social media Wednesday afternoon, so they didn't wait for the tapings here to talk about them on the show. But if you guys remember, ABC's been champs since February. They defeated Motor City Machine Guns back at Rebellion. That's February, so they're approaching month 5. On your end, I mean, not that we're going to sit here and make predictions for Slammiversary yet. We're not quite there. I think we're about a week and a half away from having that preview show. But early indicators, do you see them losing the titles here? Is there a chance that any of these other teams have a chance of taking the titles, or is this just all about kind of making the reign a little stronger?
For me, man, I mean, I think you could argue maybe that Moose and Brian Myers could make a run for it, especially with the news that Moose has just been re-signed, the longest deal in Impact Wrestling history. But my prediction, man, I don't see it coming off ABC anytime soon. I think they've got a stranglehold on it, and I think it's going to make the reign even stronger. But it's going to be an incredible match to do it. You didn't need to make it a 4-way just to strengthen their run, but I'm excited to see it.
So adding these 3 teams kind of on the notch of their belt, they already defended the belt against Aussie Open prior to Mark Davis getting hurt. TMDK's Bad Dude Tito and Shane Hayes, they defended against Subculture and the Good Hands. So they have some brains under their reigns, a little bit more top heavy as far as the teams they defeated. And they're looking to add to that. And this would be a huge notch in their belt, defending at Slammiversary, the biggest event in Impact's calendar year. And I agree. I think ABC is probably the team you want to build around. And I think the Reign has a little bit more meat on the bone as far as keeping it going. And I think, 6 months, we know Impact's not at this point, they don't care about keeping reigns. They'll just throw title changes and they'll make decisions based on how they feel about things. But Chris Bay and Ace Austin feels like the momentum behind them, and why move away from it right now?
Right, man. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, because it's going great right now.
So this is going to be taking place at Clare College in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. And the Canada pay-per-views have been great. As we mentioned, Rebellion was back in Toronto. The crowds in Toronto have been awesome, in Canada at large. The current lineup right now, it's not finalized, but of course, main evented in the final segment here. We saw them interacting here on Impact on Access. We have Alex Shelley defending his title, the Impact World Championship, against Nick Aldis. We have Deanna Purrazzo defending the Knockouts Championship against Trinity. Steve Macklin and Bully Ray teaming up against PCO and Scott D'Amore. And as we mentioned, the tag titles on the line in that 4-way. So we're going to add more matches here. I'm sure there's going to be more of the card taking shape. We are about 15 days away, 16 days and change away from Slammiversary at this point, biggest show of the year. We have our main stories set up, and we've been building towards Shelley and Aldis at this point, but a lot on the line here. And I think this pay-per-view is going to really wow some people. I know Impact always does a good job of keeping people entertained, but I think we're bringing some eyes to the product that will get people to stick around. And I'm hoping we're doing the same here by putting some eyes on Impact. And what a perfect time to start watching around this time to build towards Slammiversary.
Yeah, I mean, we could not, like we said, very serendipitous. We had the first episode of Brace for Impact on the anniversary of the first TNA pay-per-view, and now we're building, 2 weeks out to Slammiversary. It's I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that this show is really going to turn some heads, and we'll get into it here as we go over the show results, but we're already seeing writing on the wall for some other really, really good kind of mid-card secondary matches. So yeah, this is gonna be a hell of a card.
So you guys can always tune in here on Turnbuckle Tavern for Brace for Impact on YouTube, or the day after, which will be Friday mornings for the audio drop. We're going to definitely preview Slammiversary at length. Coming up in about 2 weeks, we'll have you covered that Thursday right before the show. But we have to talk about the show happening this weekend. It's a big deal for Impact Wrestling. It's a big deal for wrestling at large that we're having an Australia show in a big way here. Impact's going to be showcasing a lot of their talent here to the Australian market. And of course, on the East Coast, it'll be available 5 a.m. Eastern if you're looking to watch live. You have nothing better to do, but it'll be available on demand later. But we got two lineups, man, Friday and Saturday, some great matchups. You can really kind of use it as an appetizer for Money in the Bank if you really want to. And we have a lot of wrestling to consume. And I think people are kind of shortchanging this event. I don't think a lot of people are talking about it, but it is a really big deal, and they're stacking the card. A lot of it feels like a foregone conclusion that some of these title matches and matches are not going to change hands, but never say never. I really feel like they may pull the trigger on something here, and we'll see what happens. Maybe they don't want to offset the main storylines, but it wouldn't shock me if there is kind of a shift just to keep people on their toes a little bit.
Yeah, man, I agree, and we've already heard them kind of talking on screen about contingencies for if there are some titles changing hand, especially with Knockouts champion. If Giselle Shaw were to beat Deonna Purrazzo, that the match that we have scheduled with Trinity will then be a three-way, which basically serve as Trinity's shot and then Deonna's rematch. So, I like that element of it. I think it's really cool too. We talked about it last week how neat it is that Impact is going over to Australia because a lot of wrestling promotions don't tour through Australia. It's expensive to tour through Australia, so to be able to bring this show to the fans and then not letting it just be kind of like a house show tour in another country. It's going to be on Fight. It's going to be a televised event anywhere across the world. So I think that's really a cool layer that they're adding to it. But yeah, it's going to be a really packed weekend of wrestling, man. It's if anybody's like I said, if you're going to work early, you're working third shift, hang out on Fight around 5 a.m. and catch these shows because there's not a lame match on the card. They're both stacked.
Yeah, we'll read through the cards in 1 second, but I want to talk about the matches that were announced just today. Deonna Purrazzo is now scheduled to wrestle Melbourne's own Steph DeLander on Friday in a non-title match. They also announced Giselle Shaw versus the Dreamtime Voodoo Witch Erica Reed. And then the next day, Purrazzo will defend her knockout title against Giselle Shaw, as you mentioned before. But they also announced on Friday, Killer Kelly versus Aisha, who is a local talent from Melbourne, 23 years old. She's trained with Tyler Breeze, Sean Spear. She's around that area. And she's been on the NWA's Australian tour back in April. So looking to showcase some young talent here. We also have Slex versus Adam Brooks being announced for Friday. Brooks is going to be in action the following day in a triple threat match with Myers and former IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, who we saw in Ring of Honor, Robbie Eagles. So a lot to be said here. We talked about the main match here. Of course, Steve Maclin getting his contractually obligated championship match against Alex Shelley. But looking at these two cards, man, they look pay-per-view quality Friday and Saturday. I understand it's hard to watch 5 a.m., but there's no reason that you can't, pop it on when you get home from work on Friday night on the lead into SmackDown, lead into Rampage or your Friday of Wrestling. I think they're well worth the watch and well worth the purchase because, and we know Fight TV is going to have a little bit of that package here with, I know we mentioned the Conrad Thompson podcast they're doing. There's a whole bunch of the stuff bundled up here, but well worth the price of admission for the wrestling here we're going to get on Friday and Saturday.
Oh yeah, especially for $25 for the bundle, man. I feel like Impact always does a really good job of offering you a lot of bang for your buck. Especially compared to what people pay for like a UFC pay-per-view these days. It's pretty outrageous. So yeah, two shows for $25, can't beat it. It's also super exciting to hear about Deonna Purrazzo having a non-title match against Steph DeLander. Man, Steph DeLander is about as hot as you can get in the wrestling business, man. Right now, she's been doing a lot of running around with Cardona and doing a lot online, and it's she's been a lot of fun to watch come up, and her presence on social media has really kind of gained it's become an entity of its own. It's really excited to see her kind of take on be a hometown gal and get a shot at least cut her teeth in a non-title match against a decorated champion in Deonna Purrazzo.
The fact that it's a non-title match kind of calls into question about the finish here, and I think Deonna Purrazzo, the fact that she has bigger things to happen, of course, against Trinity at Slammiversary, the title's not changing hands, but the fact that it's a non-title match, maybe they're setting the stage for somewhere down the line, a main program between Steph DeLander, if she can categorize and give the time for Impact. I know she's super busy with wherever Cardona's going, she's going, but I could see there's some legs for a program between Deonna Purrazzo and Steph DeLander, and I think maybe they'll plant the seeds that maybe we'll get it sometime late summer, early fall. I would be very interested in something like that.
Yeah, same here. And with it being a non-title, if Steph goes over in her home country, no harm, no foul to Deonna.
So let's go and run through the card really quick here. And of course, on Friday, they're opening up that night with, main evented by the Impact World Championship, Alex Shelley against Steve Maclin. And we know we're building towards Alex Shelley and Nick Aldis. We saw the final kind of go home little thing here at the end of the show for this Down Under tour was the Alex Shelley, Nick Aldis thing. But Steve Maclin deserves his rematch, and it's a good spot to put it here. And Steve Maclin, we were kind of on Wrestling Tonight, and anytime we talk about Impact Wrestling, I liked what Maclin was doing to reinvent himself over on the Impact side, making himself a main eventer. And I still think he did a great job. And I'm still shocked Alex Shelley won the championship because it seemed like they're putting a lot of steam behind Maclin. But I'm very curious what's going to happen as far as keeping him looking strong. And I wonder what the the modus operandi is to get Macklin and Shelley. What is the function of this match? Do we want to keep Macklin looking strong to be still looked at as a main eventer, or do you want to beef up Alex Shelley going in to take on Nick Aldis? What is the function of the creative team?
Yeah, man, kind of hard to say here. I was also pretty surprised, don't get me wrong, happy to see the strap go on Alex Shelley, but I was very surprised when he took it off Macklin. So, I mean, I would imagine you want to build up Shelley and have him looking as strong as possible going into, especially, what we saw tonight with the kind of the go home segment between him and Aldis, the blow off. Yeah, I think you want to have Shelley looking as strong as possible going into this because, even though Shelley's a veteran and crowd favorite and kind of the Impact People's Champion, it's no secret there's a huge size difference between him and Aldis, and their wrestling styles are a bit different as well, man. And he's definitely got his work cut out for him going into this match.
So we also have the X Division Championship on the line. Chris Sabin defending against Frankie Kazarian and Robbie Eagles in a three-way match. This is on Friday. But we also have the Digital Media Championship on the line. Joe Hendry against Eddie Edwards. The tag titles, Chris Bay and Ace Austin versus Moose and Brian Myers in a non-title match. So not a championship match, but another non-title match similar to the DeLander match we were talking about before. The knockout champion, Deonna Purrazzo, as you mentioned, taking on Steph DeLander. Giselle Shaw versus Erica Reed. Killer Kelly versus Aisha. And Slex versus Adam Brooks. The other side on Saturday on 7-1, leading into what will be a fun day of wrestling midday for all those on the East Coast enjoying Money in the Bank in the UK. We get main evented by Knockouts Championship on the line. Deonna Purrazzo against Giselle Shaw. The tag titles will be on the line. We get the world champion in a tag title match here. Chris Bay and Ace Austin taking on the Motor City Machine Guns, Sabin and Alex Shelley. Digital Media Championship will be either Joe Hendry or Eddie Edwards against Moose. Steve Macklin versus Frankie Kazarian. Killer Kelly versus DeLander. Brian Myers versus Adam Brooks versus Robbie Eagles. And the Natural Classics versus the Velocities. Man, jam-packed cards. We got some double duty here. A lot to be excited about as far as what's going on in Wagga Wagga, the Equex Center on July 1st and June 30th, man. Some good stuff.
Yeah, man. Good. Congrats to the Australian fans. You're getting some stacked lineups here, man. It's going to be a real treat for the first run of Impact and hopefully not the last over there.
Do you see any championships changing hands, like knee-jerk reaction here? Are you saying any championships change hands, or this is just going to be a very solid card that doesn't progress more than just quality matches, introducing the Australian fans to the live Impact product?
I mean, my knee-jerk reaction, the only one that I could really see changing hands would be the Knockouts Championship. And the only reason I say that is because we've already discussed what the contingency would be going forward into Slammiversary if it were to happen. We know that we're going to have, well, we don't know for certain, but we're setting up a nice program for the Digital Media Championship between Kenny King and Joe Hendry right now on weekly TV. So I would be shocked if Joe Hendry comes out of Australia without that championship. And I definitely don't see Shelley's not losing that belt. No way in hell he's losing that belt before Slammiversary going up against Aldis. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not super confident that I see the Knockouts belt changing hands, but it's really the only one that makes sense to me since they've discussed the contingency on air. What do you think?
I agree with you. I don't see any championships changing hands, but that doesn't take away from the quality of the card for me. Predictability sometimes, as we always talk about here on the Tavern, is a good thing. And I think the wrong decision would be to make a title switch just for the sake of shock value here in Australia. If it makes sense, I think, as you mentioned, the Knockouts Championship, you could justify it because there is, as you mentioned, the contingency plan. They did make the graphic for potentially Macklin versus Aldis for Slammiversary. I just don't see that happening with the seeds they've been planting, especially not even just this Shelley and Aldis thing, but Macklin's kind of immersed in the other stuff going on Bully Ray's side. There's a lot going on with him that throwing him back in the title picture would feel misplaced. And I think Alex Shelley deserves a run. And I would be even shocked if he loses to Aldis at Slammiversary. I think we're in for a chase for Nick Aldis on the heel side, which would be a lot of fun going into the fall. There's a lot to be said about this program potentially with Shelley and Aldis, two guys that are steeped in a lot of history here with Impact Wrestling, TNA, whatever you want to call it. These guys have been kind of in the trenches at different areas of this. And you go back to Magnus and, Aldis's run here. He reinvented himself. At the end of the day, the core of who he is as a professional wrestler started here in Impact. So I think there's more than just put the title on him. I think he needs to chase. Even as a heel, there's something to that where he has to chase and Shelley just comes out unscathed. But I think it's inevitable. We're going to see Trinity is eventually going to be the Knockouts champion and Aldis is going to be the TNA Impact World Champion at this point. So At this point, I think that's where we're going, but I don't think we get there quite yet. And it seems quite obvious Slammiversary might feel like a conclusion to everything, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I could see it going either way at Slammiversary, especially for the world title picture. But I like what you said about the concept of Aldis kind of chasing it as a heel. It's, he's kind of coming in, making his return to Impact, kind of as in some ways, kind of the establishment of professional wrestling, like kind of representing the legacy and tradition, versus kind of where wrestling has gone. And yeah, I think it's gonna be fun to watch him chase.
Yeah, and if you think about what Aldis accomplished and go back to even his run through NWA and with the 10 pounds of gold, all that he did and that match at All In with Cody, that's what All In was built around. If people remember that moment where Cody defeated Aldis for the NWA championship, a lot of people tuned in for that. And then they got introduced to the other characters. So Aldis is a very important piece to what eventually became AEW. And, I think people understate a lot of times his impact in, pun intended, in professional wrestling of what he's been able to accomplish and reinvent himself. He is a huge, huge star, a true professional, a guy that any company would be lucky to have. And I'm happy to see this version of Nick Aldis in a main event scene in this version of Impact. It seems like the perfect combination for what's going to be very entertaining TV for the next couple of months. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, man, same here. Really, really looking forward to the next couple of weeks leading up to Slammiversary.
So the final piece of news here on the inside is just talk about Mickie James being cleared to return to action, and she's still a free agent. That doesn't mean that she's not returning to Impact Wrestling, but we talked about this on Wrestling Tonight, and you guys can go back and check that out from Tuesday. I'm not going to spend too much time here. I think foregone conclusion, Mickie James is expected to return to Impact Wrestling. It's been kind of hush-hush, but Fightful has reported that she's 100% ready to go. It's a matter of time. It's not if, then when. She had to relinquish her title prior to April's Rebellion pay-per-view due to the 3 broken rib cages, shoulder tear. So there's a program built in for Deonna Purrazzo if they want to tap back into it. So there's a lot to be said. You got Trinity involved in this, and you just mentioned Giselle Shaw, Deonna Purrazzo, and then bringing in a returning Mickie James. Top of the women's division, super strong, and you have a lot to be said about before the injuries. Mickie James was expected to kind of run roughshod over the top of the women's division, and I wonder if they decide to go back with that or they're happy with where they had to pivot. Interesting choices to make here for creative, but they're good choices to make because it seems like all the competition is going to breed really good competition.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, love Mickie James. She's a hell of a talent. I've seen her wrestle in the last couple of years. She has not missed a beat. She's definitely, I would say, still in her prime. I think that, Trinity's definitely going to get the Knockouts Championship, I would say, within the next 6 months, if not at Slammiversary. I can't wait to see Mickie James and Trinity in a program. I'll eat that up.
Oh, absolutely. And I think also don't forget that Nick Aldis and Mickie James are married. So I think there's a piece of Nick Aldis is there. It's a matter of time before Mickie comes back. But who's to say, man? I know Trish Stratus is getting a whole, rejuvenation on the WWE side. And we saw, obviously, WWE has had Mickie James. They like the nostalgia acts. Maybe they have a piece in mind for her. But I think betting odds, very strong odds, are that she comes back to Impact and she kind of tries to take back the crown that she lost, well, didn't even lose, that she's going to try to take back and be that stalwart in this women's division that has kind of moved on without her. And I think that's also the funny part here is that Mickie James seemed like the foregone conclusion to come back and just take the title back when she's ready. But I'm not sure if that's so obvious anymore. Deonna Purrazzo's done great things for the Knockouts Championship, which is a good thing. It just shows how strong the women's division became because of what Mickie James was doing all those months with the title.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see what she does when she gets back. Because, I mean, I could see Mickie coming back and saying, hey, I'm here to take back what's mine. But, she's not going to walk right into it.
All right, with that being said, that's the news here. We'll keep you guys up to date. Of course, next week we'll break down all the stuff that happened on the Down Under Tour. We'll talk about the Slammiversary card as we build towards that. And then any other Impact news that pops in here. But we're going to get into Impact on Access. This is why we're here. We're reacting to it. And let's get right into it with the blow by blow section.
Blow by blow.
All right, so here we are for Impact on Access. It is June 29th, the final Impact episode of June of 2023. And you mentioned before, Center Stage is the home of this show. Great production value. They lead right into action. If you guys didn't check out BTI, which is on YouTube prior, it's before the Impact. They have some stuff. We'll cover it middle of here, the stuff with Ziggy Dice and the stuff they were doing with his referee stuff. You don't miss a lot of the progression story, so they'll catch you up in the middle of this, but feels like we jump right into the action, and that's what I love about these shows.
Yeah, man, same here. I was texting you as the show was coming on. We opened up the show with the X Division Championship rematch for Trey Miguel going up against Chris Sabin. Man, this was, I mean, what an opener! Like, both these guys are incredible talents. Really interesting pairing too. X Division's really kind of known for the high flying and high risk and style of wrestling. And Chris Sabin, he's got some high flying tendencies, but he's also he's a technical wizard, man. And having Trey Miguel go up against him is a really fun pairing. I can't recall seeing these guys wrestle each other. I've seen them, so I was excited to see them go up against each other. And yeah, man, it was a good match. It picked up kind of right where it left off with Sabin and Miguel just kind of grappling. They looked like a couple of bull elks locking antlers, man. In the first couple of minutes, they really just couldn't get off each other.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you mentioned before the high flying nature. Both these guys can take to the air, but they started this out with the technical wrestling. And a lot of times you don't really see that. And even to the point you mentioned them being locked up, they rolled out of the ring still locked up. That was a cool aesthetic. And these guys were equally matched. I really enjoy that. Of course, Trey Miguel, young talent here. The X Division is one of those guys he's built around. And Chris Sabin did a good job of, despite, again, we talked about championship matches, doesn't feel like they could change hands, but keeping Trey Miguel just as relevant on Chris Sabin's level. I thought they did a good job with this, and seeing the difference in style as the match went on, from the technical stuff where they started to actually move fast paced and the drop kicks to the knees, and man, the near falls too. I think this match had a lot of good near falls, and it was telling a really good story until we got to the end with the DQ. Unfortunately, they had to go the DQ finish, but sometimes disqualifications are necessary. And I think this is one of the cases here to keep Trey Miguel strong and be kind of suited for another rematch. Because I think eventually the X Division Championship is going to come back to Trey Miguel. I think it's inevitable. I think the championship belongs on his waist eventually.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Ray Walton Hannafin, I think, said that Trey Miguel's got, I believe, the third longest X Division streak of any X Division champion, which is incredibly impressive. I liked, I talk about each week how Impact continues to surprise me every week. Every minute that I think I've got the finish figured out, they come out of left field. And this DQ finish did that for me. And, also, I will say right before the DQ, very impressive spot from Chris Sabin, basically reversing a Meteora into an STF. I've never seen that before. That was incredible.
It was awesome.
So yeah, if you guys missed that, definitely go back and check it out. But yeah, the DQ tonight coming for DQ for Trey Miguel, coming from the hands of Zachary Wentz, who we have not seen in quite some time. So yeah, that was very cool to see him come back. Like I said, protects Chris Sabin going into the next couple of weeks, going into Slammiversary. He's still the champion, but also sets up the reunion of the Rascals, who we haven't seen on Impact TV together for damn near 3 years. So I thought this told a good story. It pairs up Trey Miguel and Wentz together as the Rascals, so reunites them as a tag team. And obviously we're weeks away from it, but sets it up nicely for them to be in a tag feud with the Motor City Machine Guns.
I agree with that. And there's so much, we were talking about this with the women's division, where everything's so layered, where on night 1 and night 2 of this Down Under tour, you have the world champion, X Division champion taking on the tag champions, and the divisions, there's no hard line where anybody is in one division or challenging for one championship. It seems like, again, Trey Miguel and Chris Sabin are going to have a little bit more of conflict over the X Division championship. But now with the Rascals reunited, it seems like they're going to be in the hunt for the tag titles too. And that's the best part about all of this. It's so diverse and dynamic. And I think that's what a lot of promotions do. They have this streamlined thought about where they're going with the story and keeping guys in a certain line. Sabin's in the X Division. He's the champion. He's staying here. Same thing with Miguel. No, but they put a pipe bomb in that and kind of blow it up and say, Miguel's going to be involved in the tag stuff. He's going to be involved in X Division. He's going to be involved in all the things we need him to be involved in. And why not, man? They maximize their roster. That's the thing about all these guys. You look at the talent on this roster, you could put it against a lot of different promotions rosters, AEW, WWE, and compare them in the way you want to. What no one does better is maximizing the talent and utilizing every drop that they have to make good programming. And this is an example. We'll see guys come in and out of this show. We see Lio Rush twice in this show. You see Chris Sabin twice in this show. There's different pieces of Impact just maximizing the talent and exposure for the guys that really draw eyes to the program. And Miguel and Sabin are two guys you tune in for. I really do. There's a reason why I put them on the graphic when we did this show. They're to me, this is the match I was looking forward to, and opening the night with it and then leaving you wanting more. I thought it was masterfully done.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And just kind of the bringing Shelley out to kind of come to Sabin's aid, setting up the future tag feud between these guys. I love that. And, there was a great promo right after this backstage from the Rascals, man. And Zachary Wentz coming back strong, obviously not missing us beat with the mic skills. And, got to see a little fire out of Trey Miguel too, man, which was great. He had the one line, "Smoke them if you got them," and the Rascals got all of them. I'm just super excited to see these guys hit the tag division. It's good to see Wentz back.
The fluidity from the mid card to the main event, it feels like at any point anybody can be heated up and tossed to different divisions. And I don't mean that as a knock. I really think these guys are able to take the next step pretty quickly, more so than a lot of WWE and AEW. Compare them to them. How long it takes a guy from the mid card to the main event. We're watching LA Knight kind of battle through that on his way up to Money in the Bank, but it feels like there's so many interactions with main eventers here where it feels natural that even if Trey Miguel was eventually to challenge Alex Shelley for the championship at some one-off pay-per-view, maybe on an Impact show, it doesn't feel weird because he's already had interactions where they almost feel on par or equal. Because if you look at it this way through logic, he took Chris Sabin to the limit here. They got DQ'd. The only reason that he didn't win the championship was because Zachary Wentz did get involved and he has a claim for a rematch, all that stuff. But if you look at tag partners, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley are considered equals. So that also by proxy creates Trey Miguel on that same level. And that's the way creative has to think to make their stars feel bigger and without defeating champions, without Trey Miguel ever having to step in the ring with Shelley and pinning him.
Yeah, it's like you said, the interchangeability is really unique to Impact. I think the way they set that up is just very, very masterful.
Great match to open the show. And one of the rare times I'm okay with a DQ finish. I just got done doing Shot Nostalgia WWF 1998, and we were littered with DQ finishes. But this is one of the functions that felt appropriate easily. I mean, when you look at this match, it seemed like Chris Sabin was going to get the win because of obviously the program going in and Trey Miguel not ready to take the title back from Sabin. But like I said, I think this sets up the stage past Slammiversary. They're planting seeds and they're going to be reaping these crops a long time from now, whether it's the tag feud with the Rascals in Motor City or eventually the X Division Championship. That's the best part about this. You don't know exactly where they're going to go and when they want to harvest these crops down the line.
Yeah, always keeping us guessing.
So we move into this next match. It is an intergender match here. Jay Vidal taking on Trinity. So Jay Vidal had Giselle Shaw and Savannah Evans in his corner. This is the first time, and the announcers had said, first time Trinity's ever been involved in an intergender match here, which I didn't know. Impact kind of the most progressive way of doing this. We always give GCW their flowers for doing this and presenting their women in a certain light, but you got to give Impact their credit. The fact that they've had, Tessa Blanchard being their world champion and leading the way with the intergender divisions and all that. This is another example of it. And it didn't seem weird that Trinity was in the ring with a guy here. And this was really just to build up Trinity and Deonna Purrazzo and also kind of set the seeds for Giselle Shaw and keeping everybody aware of all the leverage that's happening here and the importance of the Down Under Tour and eventually Slammiversary, making sure these pit stops are not taken for granted.
Yeah, man, they did not feel out of place at all. And I think Impact does a great job at doing that. Trinity's first singles match with a male opponent, because I believe she has probably at one point in time been in an intergender tag match, probably with her husband. But yeah, very cool to see her in this spot. Like you said, this was definitely kind of building and grooming for the match against Deonna Purrazzo. Deonna Purrazzo came out and joined the commentary team for this match to scout Trinity. Also, keep eyes on Giselle. Crowd was super hot for Trinity coming out, man. She got a great reception. That center stage, it's not a huge place from what it looks like, but the crowd was very, very hot for it, man. I thought this was a good match. Trinity held her own. She looked really, really good. This is, Vidal, like I said, it didn't feel odd. I feel like if WWE were to attempt an intergender match, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about it. I just don't think. I think it's maybe the fact that they've never done it leaves a little taboo to it. But yeah, like you said, Impact is really the best at executing this style of wrestling. Um, Trinity gets the win here, but short-lived in the celebration there because Giselle Shaw and Savannah Evans jump in and start jumping her pretty quick. So Deanna gets up from the commentary desk, and you think there for a minute she's going to run in and save Trinity, but she really just kind of circles and watches there for a little bit, which I thought was interesting. Deanna Purrazzo is definitely not a heel champion by any means. I think she's a babyface for sure, but she shows that she's not just out here to fight anybody's fight, for the sake of doing what's right and good. She's out here protecting her own interests.
Absolutely. You definitely made it clear that Deanna Purrazzo has her best interest in mind and her future business and title matches in mind, and seeing Trinity as one of those people that are gunning to take her championship. That's a big piece of Deanna Purrazzo's motives. And I think a lot of times in wrestling, we just take for granted, like, baby faces are going to help baby faces and heels are going to help heels. But what I really like is the dynamic nature of someone like Deanna Purrazzo. Yes, she has a tendency to be a good guy, but if it doesn't make sense to make the save right away and go all in and risk what is really her breadwinner, whatever you want to say, that is the championship belt, it doesn't make any sense for her to pivot in that way. And Giselle Shaw and Savannah Evans taking on Trinity, the right thing to do is to help and make the save. She eventually did get in the ring to kind of shoo them off, but there was that hesitancy, which is important to make these characters feel real. And I think sometimes in wrestling that just take for granted. This guy's a face, that means he's a face. Sometimes faces and faces don't like each other. And I think that more times in wrestling that should be accounted for, because sometimes heels shouldn't like each other. That creates more of a realistic setting for a workplace or wrestling landscape.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you don't get to be a champion without serving your own personal interest.
Absolutely. And speaking of champion, we just talked about Moose in the news last week. We covered him in long form on Wrestling Tonight. He was backstage with Brian Myers and the Good Hands. They were pumped up that Moose aided them in getting the win last week. Moose then told Myers that he was happy to be collaboratively working with Myers and that he needed to get rid of the dead weight. Turned his head to the Good Hands. John Schuyler was like, "What's happening?" Jason Hotch said, I think we just got jobbed. So some humor here, and Moose and Brian Myers and the Good Hands. A good segment. I'm very impressed every time to see Brian Myers on the screen. I just think about the transformation he's made to his body, and do the Good Hands. Very impressive. So some, interesting to see what they go here. I don't want them to make the Good Hands a goofy character. I like what they do in the ring, so I don't want them to move too far away from that.
Yeah, I agree, man. I don't want them to just kind of become a the Pepsi brand of the Good Brothers or anything like that. I think they have a lot to offer on their own. But yeah, I thought this was a cool segment. Like we said, it's kind of the formula. We get a great in-ring match, and then we go backstage and get Moose. But yeah, Moose seems pretty confident of their chances going into Slammiversary at the shot at the tag title. So yeah, we'll be interesting to see there. But yeah, poor Good Hands just can't really catch a break, man. This is not the first time they've been ditched.
Yeah. So before we move into our next match here, as I mentioned before on BTI, we had a match. Johnny Swinger was involved in a match, and they're doing this whole thing with Zicky Dice that he's trying to become a referee, and he did get his referee's license, and they referenced this BTI match, show highlights of it, but Johnny Swinger and Zicky Dice were backstage talking about it. Swinger asked for, quote, a Sharpie gimmick to write his win on a poster. We had an actual Impact official showing up in the back. He informed Johnny Swinger that the match that happened and his win was overturned because of the shenanigans that happened during the match, the fast count by Zicky Dice. So Zicky Dice is calling himself as the official Zick Patrick, as reference to Nick Patrick in WCW side. And then the referee informed him that he would lose his referee license if he did that again. Kind of digging this. I love Zicky Dice as a character. I love what he was doing in NWA. And this is what I mean. Even in the undercard stuff, where there's really no consequences to this in any way, it still feels fun and meaningful that these guys are getting some TV time. Even if it's on BTI, they get a little bit of a segment here that kind of shows the charisma and range of a guy like Zicky Dice.
It's super fun, man. And I mean, how much, how well they told this simple story in just under 2 minutes. I just absolutely loved. I mean, Zicky Dice is fucking excellent, man. And it was the fastest count I've ever seen in the history of wrestling. Like I almost did. It was, and the fact that he's calling himself Zick Patrick just popped me so hard in my basement, man. Yeah, Nick Patrick, the historic crooked NWO referee back in the day. I love the whole story of Johnny Swinger's journey to get 50 wins to have a title shot, to have a world title shot. It's a great secondary or, even tertiary story to have here that just, like we said, man, layers on layers.
And eventually, if they get Johnny Swinger these 50 wins and he does get a title shot, it would be still funny to see him get squashed or something like that, where there's some tangible nature and payoff to this story. And it doesn't have to lead to him being a main eventer or winning a title. It's cool to see this undercard of the roster still aspiring for greater things. And sometimes that gets lost on a lot of different promotions where, the undercard feels like the undercard. They're going to be lumberjacks in matches. They're just going to be kind of fodder for the main roster. But this is cool that it shows like the motives of guys like Johnny Swinger and Zicky Dice. Like there's stuff going on the underneath, even though they're not real contenders for any championships at the moment.
Yeah, gives them a little bit of personality, man. And that's when you have guys like Zicky Dice and Johnny Swinger who are full of personality in their own self, having them be able to show it, even with it not being a major part of the show, is just it obviously shows how good Impact is at doing story.
It reminds me a lot of what they were doing in the Ruthless Aggression or even like the end of the Attitude Era with Jamie Noble, or I know it was centered around the Cruiserweight Championship at some points, but the stories with Jamie Noble and even go back in the day with a guy like Hurricane Helms, those stories, even though those guys felt like they could never be more than just either a Cruiserweight or hardcore or European champion, it still gave them momentum where you even get those one-off feuds where like Hurricane feuded with the Rock for that short period of time. And that's so memorable. So eventually the payoff with this Johnny Swinger, Zicky Dice thing, if eventually he interacts with one of the bigger champions, it might be very memorable for fans out there, even if it's in a jobbing effort, or maybe he steals a win over someone he has no business beating. I think that has some, it has some longevity if you do it right.
Oh, absolutely.
So we lead into this next match. It is Jack Price taking on the debut in Lio Rush here. And Lio Rush, man, like what else can you say about this guy? Everywhere he goes, he shines. He's been on the independents over here in the Northeast for a bit. He's in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and here he is in Impact Wrestling. And man, he hasn't missed a step. If you haven't seen Lio Rush in a while since he left WWE, put him on your radar. So fast, so crisp. Everything he does is so snug and stiff. And the thing is too, I look at him as like as a meter, like he can move, 150 miles per hour, but then completely turn it down to 50, 40 and turn it down to a technical slow now with chops in the corner and the pacing and working the crowd. And this is an extended squash. Like, of course they wanted Leo to get all his shit in and get all the highlights, gave the announcers just enough time to go over his accolades, talk about his time in WWE, talk about his time in New Japan Pro Wrestling, talk about his association with New Japan, with Chaos. And after that, the match was over. Hit the final hour for the pinfall. As far as debuts go, hard to do a better one here. Lio Rush has got all the hits in. And man, again, this is a dude that I can't imagine WWE ever let this guy go. He is fantastic. I loved his work with Bobby Lashley on WWE. Anytime Lio Rush is the ring, to me, it's must see.
Yeah, this was like you said, man, extended squash, perfect showing, perfect first introduction for Leo in Impact. It was a showcase of speed, man, for sure. Like you mentioned, the guy can go 150 miles an hour. He's got to be one of the fastest guys in the ring doing it today, maybe if ever. I mean, this is a great sign for Impact. And, I'm excited to see him. I mean, because I think it's inevitable that he's a future X Division champion.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely plant the seeds later tonight with that. But before we get there, we had a backstage segment, mini feud brewing here with Dango, Dirty Dango, cutting a promo on Santino. And this promo was a little bit rough. And of course, there's agreement here and everybody knows the story, or maybe they don't, about Santino and his getting his start with WWE, where he was working behind the scenes and training throughout WWE, and he had allegedly made fun of something Jim Cornette said, and Jim Cornette slapped him in front of the roster, and that eventually led to kind of this like lore behind Santino Marella as he kind of got built up. And now that Santino's daughter is involved in NXT, he referenced that someone may be slapping her around, which led to Santino's promo, which was so interesting because Santino, of course, it's not his real accent. If you ever hear him talk, I mean, most notably on the Chris Van Vliet interview, he has a typical voice. He doesn't speak like that. But for him to use that accent, that faux Italian accent, and cut a passionate promo where you felt the emotion out of him, I thought this was a great job by Santino. And I think back to him eliciting moments and emotions back at Elimination Chamber where everybody was rooting for him to be the world heavyweight champion. This dude, when he wants to pull it out, there's a lot on the line for him, and he can really make people feel things. This was a great promo, just about a mini feud with Dango and Santino. I was like, God damn, I felt something here.
Yeah, dude, same. I thought the exact same thing. I mean, I love Dirty Dango pulling out a little reality in his promo and just coming off as a super dastardly heel. But yeah, man, Santino cut a spicy one on him here and says that he's absolutely coming for him. And it sounds like at Slammiversary, which is super exciting. An already stacked card. Get a match between Santino Marella and Dirty Dango. I'm all for it, man. All in, because yeah, he really came for him. Another 2-minute segment at most. It just really got a rise out of me. Just excellent work.
If people are not familiar with Santino Marella's work and like how popular he was for a short period of time there, during a time where people were desperate for just a change, like I said, go back and I forget the year that it was. I can look back in a second when Colton's covering the next match. I'll get it for you guys. But there was a time where Santino Marella was one of the hottest guys on the WWE roster, all because of his comedic timing and his ability to tell stories in the ring. And even in time where he's not an active wrestler at full length here, he's supposed to be an authority figure, and he's going to get in the ring here at Slammiversary. There's a lot to be said about his professionalism, what he brings to the television product, because polished as hell. This was a polished promo from two guys that got kind of honed their chops on the WWE side of things, bringing that type of noise over to the Impact side. You could tell that these guys knew what they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into the next match, we did have another backstage segment with Frankie Kazarian and Eddie Edwards backstage. Basically, Kaz comes up to Eddie. We predicted this last week after, the kind of the flubbed finish where Eddie accidentally did some friendly fire on Frankie. Basically, Kaz calls him out, says he wants answers. Was it an accident? Was it not? In basically, kind of taking Eddie to task on, his skills as a tag team wrestler and whether or not it was intentional. Sets it up. They announce it later in the show that this sets them up for a one-on-one match next week. Two incredible veteran talents. This will be a good one. Looking forward to seeing it.
So before we move on to the Masha match here, it was 2012 Elimination Chamber. He was in the chamber, and Daniel Bryan was the champ going and doing such a good job as a heel where people just wanted something else, and he came within seconds of winning the World Heavyweight Championship. If you guys are looking for any homework to watch a match, go check out that Santino match and listen to the crowd of just how much they were enjoying what he was doing. Go back and watch. And Colton, I'm not sure if you've ever seen that match.
I have not. I need to go back and watch that myself.
Check it out. So as you mentioned before, we led into this next match, Kylan King with Taylor Wilde taking on Masha Slamovich a lot after the fact, but break down this match, man. I thought it was a really good knockouts women's division match.
Dude, absolutely. And it set up the story perfectly, man. Obviously Kylan King, she wants payback on Masha after Masha came out and stuck her nose in her business last week, coming to Killer Kelly's aid. So yeah, man, this is Kylan King, Masha Slamovich, two of the best in the knockouts division, man. Really good match here. Slamovich, she early on goes for a dive through the rope. And Kylan King catches her, takes control of the match and keeps it there for a while, man. And real stiff blows from both women. And the thing is, Taylor Wilde pays dividends here today, man. She ref keeps getting caught up in the ring, and Taylor Wilde is getting her hands and roughing up Slamovich on multiple occasions, and to the point where it looks like that Kylan King might be ready to run off with this match. And then Killer Kelly comes down to the ring, chain in hand, chokes out Taylor Wilde on the ramp. And while Kylan's distracted, kind of watching what's going on the ramp there, Masha hits a snowplow and gets the win here, man. This was a cool match. It was a quick one, but told a great story. And yeah, really good showing from both these women. We got to see a little bit more, last week when Masha came out to Kelly's aid, not too long ago, they were feuding pretty hard. And, now it looks like there might be the workings of them kind of teaming up. And Masha actually wrapped the chain around her neck as well, kind of pulled Kelly in close. And it looks like, we might be setting up another tag feud here as well between Slamovic and Kelly going up against the Coven.
Yeah, and it looks like, obviously, with the history with Slammiversary and Killer Kelly and the stuff with the dog collar, it seems like we might be getting, as you mentioned, I'm not sure I think we're eventually going to get to a dog collar tag team match. It feels like we're going to go there, but I think that's probably the build towards something in the future. But at the very least, seeing two heated rivals kind of have their backs with mutual respect, tale as old as time, but told really well here. And Masha, as we know, former GCW champion, she lost the title, Cage of Survival, to Blake Christian when he cashed in. She's someone that badass. And, two women in this division that are always a threat to take the Knockouts Championship at any given moment. And this is a nice sub feud, not involving the Knockouts Championship, and meaningful stuff. Like, really it feels like it has some stakes eventually, that you feel like whoever's going to come out of this kind of blood feud happening with this tag teams, that the winning side might be in turn going to get a Knockouts Championship shot. And it feels like that's how, as we mentioned, the cohesiveness and interchangeableness of the full roster, that anytime you can kind of heat up these guys and throw them in different programs, and it doesn't feel like it doesn't make sense.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, any of these four women could be a contender for the Knockouts title. Very interchangeable.
So before we move into our main event of the evening, we have a tremendous promo video that is Scott D'Amore, and talks about all the hand that he had in getting their start in the business, and talks about the guys he's trained, and talked about how his own wrestling career was significant, which was a great promo. Impact did a good job. Shout out to the production team, which leads us straight into that backstage segment with Scott D'Amore with Gia Miller, and the Good Hands are there. And they came up and challenged D'Amore to a warm-up match for Slammiversary. So Hotch and Skylar, fresh off of being kind of dismissed by Moose and Brian Myers and kind of feeling kind of shitty about themselves, we're like, all right, let's get a win here against Scott D'Amore. And Scott D'Amore said, you know what? You want a tag match? Here's PCO. So I think they looked at each other and probably realized this is a bad idea. We didn't consider that the French-Canadian Frankenstein would be with Scott D'Amore. So kind of looks like Scott D'Amore and PCO are going to be taking their frustrations out on the Good Hands. And, unless something changes here, they're about to get their ass whooped on July 15th.
What it looks like, man, actually, I think it's going to be a 2-on-1 handicap match, is what D'Amore was saying. He said, they wanted a piece of D'Amore, and he's saying that I've got, my matches at Slammiversary, and that's it. So it sounds like at least next week they're setting them up for a 2-on-1 against PCO, which, don't see too many handicap matches anymore. And I think PCO is not going to have any trouble. That guy's an absolute freak of nature, man. I love getting to see him work. So that'll be cool, man. And just going back to the Scott D'Amore package, like you said, props to the production team. Absolutely killer job putting that together. Very cool to see all those guys, Sabu, Tommy Dreamer, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin, Kazarian, and Kushida, just all putting Scott D'Amore over, and, the impact that he's had on their careers and just the wrestling business as a whole. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing him get back in the ring and, really show what he can do. Because he's an incredible coach, man, just because he's been in this administrative role for as long as he has. Obviously the guy, he's you don't forget that shit. He's still got it. And I'm excited to see him go up against Bully Ray and Macklin.
Yeah, he's been an on-screen talent. He's been behind the scenes. He's done it all in wrestling. So to see him kind of in the last few months get these memorable moments, whether it be a flaming table or the Canadian Destroyer, and seeing the stuff, and this will be another one of those moments where it's fun. And I think it draws some eyes to the product when you see a guy like Scott D'Amore doing the Canadian Destroyer or taking a powerbomb through a flaming table. It catches people's eyes on social media when you see that happening. Like, what is that, Scott D'Amore? Did he just take a powerbomb from Bully Ray through through a title? I mean, through a table? Absolutely insane. So, man, this is a lot of fun, and this is a sub feud here. And PCO playing the role of how they're utilizing Kane back in the Attitude Era, where it's like, he's not the champion, but at any time, like he could beat the shit out of your champion. He's always that guy who's like lurking in the background. Steve Macklin and PCO had that epic match over the championship belt, and it felt like PCO had a chance to win the championship belt, but I think logic made you feel he wouldn't. But there was always that looming threat, and I think that's the best function for him on the roster. They're utilizing him so effectively.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And like, I got to see him year before last at an Impact show here in Louisville, and gosh, dude, I mean, he's getting up there in age, man, but he don't tell him that because he's not missing a beat, and the chances this guy's taking, the shit he's putting his body through is just absolutely incredible.
I was a few Ring of Honor shows when he was the Ring of Honor World Champion, and he tore it up. The things he was doing and taking the bumps in the outside and first of all, this how big he is and his age. Just, I mean, we saw Sting last night on Dynamite taking risk upon risk and busted his lip open and all that. So yeah, age is just a number. And I think PCO going out there and they're utilizing him in such an effective way. And I love this because people forget, like, this dude has been in the business years. Like, we're approaching 30 years of PCO, different iterations of him. So glad he's still producing and he's helping younger talent get over. And that's another great thing we can take away from this.
Absolutely.
So we lead it to Kenny King and defeating Yui Uemura. So main story here is not the Yui Uemura stuff with Kenny King and Sheldon Jean. Main stuff is the Joe Hendry stuff, which I'm always here for the Joe Hendry stuff. We got, as we mentioned, the immersive community of production on the Impact side. We had Joe Hendry in the truck, and he wants to show something relevant when it cues up about Kenny King. And then while King's match began with Uemura, so match became secondary to what was going on with Joe Hendry. That, of course, and we used to see that in the Monday Night Wars on the WCW side, on the WWF side. There was always the things where what's going on in the ring is secondary. This is one of the cases here, and done pretty well. Eventually, King hit the Royal Flush soon thereafter for the win. But after the matches where Joe Hendry came out to congratulate Kenny King, kind of sarcastically, he introduced his new song celebrating the career of Kenny King, which is fucking amazing, and started making fun of him. So we mentioned feuds and setting the stage for Slammiversary. It seems like this is another match set up for Slammiversary, and this popped me. Joe Hendry is, pun intended, I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in him.
I also 100% believe in Joe Hendry, man. He's quickly becoming my favorite part of weekly TV, man. Because I love the breadcrumb of them showing him in the truck before the match. You get through the match, and then he comes out at the end. I liked it that they kind of teased it, and also not to get lost here. King gets him a clean win here, which I thought was cool.
True.
He had some heel tendencies in the couple eye pokes and things in the match, but the finish was clean. But man, yeah, Hendry comes out and says he's returning the favor of interrupting his match, but instead of just being an ass about it, he's got a gift. And like you said, new music video where he calls out Kenny King for his time as a male stripper in 2013.
So
dude, this had me rolling. It was absolutely awesome. If you didn't watch the show, if you're going to work tomorrow and you don't have time to watch the whole show, at least look up on YouTube Stripper Kenny, because the graphic was fantastic. The music was fantastic. Once again, man, Joe Hendry just burying folks with his musical capabilities. And yeah, this was great. Whole crowd was chanting Stripper Kenny before it was over. This is peak pro wrestling right here.
Yes. Yeah, the interactiveness to the theme song, and even during when the song played on Joe Hendry's way out, he can't help himself to clap to, I believe in Joe Hendry, and he claps himself on the microphone. It's just like, it's fantastic. It shows how when you have a theme song that's catchy, and not dismissing the charisma of Joe Hendry, because he has it in spades, the ability to captivate an audience. Great. And Kenny King's going to benefit from working here. And he got the clean win over Yui Uemura, which we don't want to look past, as you mentioned before. Great clean win here. Of course, he's being the heel, but really putting over the Royal Flush and really making sure that people understand he's a contender. This has a lot of potential to be a lot of fun, with the beginning stages of this feud being this music video. And that's extends it past just in the ring action of Joe Hendry defending his title. It's like, you made it personal now with the song. Now people are going to be doing this. And we've seen Joe Hendry do this countless times before. It's part of his repertoire. And that's just what makes him so exciting.
Yeah, man. Great. And also thought it was cool that, just the nod to Renee's podcast as well before he set it up, that came out. The fact that Kenny spent time as a stripper came out on her podcast. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Shout out to Tyson here. Nothing beats Edge's bitch song. That went back to watching Impact again. Dude, agreed. again, that was great. Brought eyes to the product, and I think people even saw that video without even watching that. So I'm sure people will come across the stripper Kenny video on YouTube, which I'm sure is posted already, and that will bring some eyes to the product. And I got to tell you, Joe Hendry popped on my timeline well before I started watching Impact consistently again. And that speaks volumes about how people are consuming their wrestling. Joe Hendry's one of those guys that comes across and he catches your eye for one reason or another. So we have here Kevin Kelly. Before we get to this final promo of the show, Kevin Kelly was joining the show to hype up New Japan Pro Wrestling on Access, featuring Master Wato and Takahashi and El Fantasma versus David Finlay. So the relationship on Access with New Japan Pro Wrestling, if you guys are unaware, the United States production, they show some New Japan Pro Wrestling stuff. So cool to see the interaction here. Fresh off Forbidden Door, we're kind of leaning into eventually the Multiverse United on the Impact side, where doesn't have as much momentum and steam and spotlight on it, but just as important, this Multiverse United show with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Impact. We're going to see Tanahashi, some other New Japan Pro Wrestling talent out there competing with the Impact talent. It's good for both brands. Again, doesn't have the same spotlight that a Forbidden Door show has, but it's one of those things where Impact is doing the same things on their side, exposing their talent to the Japanese audience and vice versa. It's good for the roster.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love that Impact plugs a New Japan every week because it comes on Access right after. I think that's just love that open door policy and that camaraderie among promotions.
So we lead here with this. They aired it as Nick Aldis will address his actions as the main event segment here. And he did address his actions. Nick Aldis gets a main event level entrance here. And he comes out and Colton, dude, this dude is full blown heel. Like didn't kind of go to one side. He fully tilted himself heel and cut one of, honestly, a really good heel promo that was calling out Alex Shelley, the history of Impact Wrestling, and his role in the history of Impact as Magnus. And I thought this was a really, really good promo on Nick Aldis' side.
I did too, man. I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of layers to it. He brings out Alex Shelley. Shelley tries to get in the ring with him and he says, you know what, you're the people's champ. Why don't you go out there and sit with the fans? And I think that was intended to be kind of a dig towards Shelley and to take him down a peg. But of course, Shelley's like, oh man, I'll be absolutely more than happy to go out here and sit with the Impact faithful. And which, just continues to get Shelley over with the fans. But yeah, I mean, he just kind of called Shelley out and said, yo, my first week back, you and Sabin basically tried to make me look like a putz. That's why I did what I did. And he basically says that, he's had he's had the blessing and the recognition from the likes of Ric Flair and Harley Race, and that he stands for the legacy and tradition of pro wrestling, and that he thinks that Alex Shelley is taking it to a quote dark and nasty place, and he doesn't like that. And yeah, man, this is not what I expected this promo was going to be, but I think you hit the nail on the head. This is a killer heel promo, man, and basically, the crowd is biting back at Aldis the whole time. I love that he didn't just ignore them. It was just like basically, telling people to shut up. I'm going to get this out whether you like it or not. Shelley starts chirping back at him, and Aldis tells him to shut his mouth. And he's like, "Why don't you come down here and make me shut it, man?" And it's not long after that, Aldis gets down there, and Shelley just starts laying into him before he can, barely get his jacket off.
Absolutely. And before we get into the stuff that happens with Sabin and eventually Leo Rush and all the stuff that goes on with that, what I did enjoy about this Aldis promo, and so often when we have a heel turn on anybody, we get it's because of you fans and getting into the fans of being the reason. No, Aldis made it very clear that he feels like he's the good guy in this situation, despite being booed by the fans. He feels like he is the legacy and the longevity of professional wrestling, where he has, as you mentioned, the credentials of a guy like Harley Race. And that speaks volumes to, even though they boo him, he's the best thing for professional wrestling. And it's the better than you, the snobbish like gimmick that he was doing in NWA, but even better now because he's targeting someone like Alex Shelley, who he feels represents in his mind, in kayfabe, what wrestling represents in a bad way of, yeah, your legacy's there, but it's not the wrestling I enjoy, not the wrestling I want to leave behind. And at the core of that, that's a feud as old as time. The mindset of what wrestling is to both two different guys. They work two different styles, and I think they're going to have an awesome match, but where they came from, how they got there, and the type of match they like to wrestle, they're different. They couldn't be more different. So that was the best part about it, because they could have easily went with, I did this because because the fans don't deserve whatever. He didn't make it that old trope of just being about, I'm a heel because I'm a heel and you guys made me do this. It felt real, because at the end of the day, Nick Aldis doesn't think he's wrong.
No, they both are coming at it as in each of their respective minds, they're both the hero, which is the best way to tell this story.
Yeah, because a lot of times the heel is the heel just to be a bad guy. But really, if you think about the motives of an athlete or professional wrestler, Nick Aldis 100% believes everything he's selling to everybody, because he's not pulling any punches. And whether you like it or not, his actions speak volumes of being a bad guy, quote. But I think he would paint himself in the picture of being a good guy, held down. He's the guy that came to save Impact, and Alex Shelley is holding it back from achieving the heights where they want to get it to, and they need someone like Aldis to take it to the next level. Really awesome promo. It's not just about the immediate with Shelley and Aldis. It's about bigger picture here. It's about Aldis having the growth of Impact Wrestling on his mind, and Shelley looking at it like, you left us. You were no longer here, and we grew to bigger and better things without you. I love this.
Yeah, I do too, man. It's setting up, and we've still got 2 more weeks to build this. So I'm excited to see where they go continuing with it. But yeah, I absolutely love this promo.
So Nick Aldis and, as you mentioned, Alex Shelley are brawling, and then Aldis gets the upper hand and rakes the eyes, and he grabs the Impact Championship belt, and he goes to hit him with it, and out comes Chris Sabin to make the save. And shockingly, as we mentioned, we had the debuting Lio Rush coming out for that match, but he also came out here and attacked Chris Sabin, setting his eyes on clearly the X Division Championship. And man, quickly Lio Rush was a relative unknown for the Impact audience. He's now involved in meaningful storyline. The final go home for this Down Under tour, he's there, kind of taking it to Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley. And this was it shows where Lio Rush is going to be on the card for them,
which I'm excited to see, man. I mean, like I said, I mentioned it earlier. I wrote down in my notes during his match, I was like, it's only a matter of time before Leo's going to be a major player in the X Division. Well, it sounds like, we don't have an X Division match, set. Do we? I don't believe we have an X Division match set up for Slammiversary just yet, do we?
Not yet. We only have that triple threat match for the Down Under tour.
For the Australia tour. So yeah, I think, seems like the most logical move, man, that he's going to work his way right into the number 1 contender spot for that, which I absolutely love. I mean, like we said, man, Lio Rush, he's a top guy anywhere that he's been, New Japan, indie promotions, WWE, like the guy does not disappoint. So yeah, I did not expect him to come out. I didn't expect Aldis to have any sort of backup, and I don't necessarily think Lio came out to align himself with Aldis necessarily. It was more so coming at Sabin and coming for the X Division title. But it was just a nice cherry on top of an already very, very well done closing segment to a show that sets me up wanting more. I'm excited. I cannot wait for next Thursday.
Yeah, it was a great go-home angle, and the addition of Lio Rush certainly adds more questions than answers, and sometimes you need that going into like this Down Under tour. It makes you want to watch, and then eventually Slammiversary is shaping up to be very interesting with Lio Rush now involved in the main event scene, but also in the X Division scene. And then on top of that, as you mentioned before, setting the stage for the Rascals versus Motor City, where does that take place? And is that going to be in the fall? Are they going to hold that off? Or is that going to happen on Impact on Access? Or this has a lot of legs here, man. And like the world title and the X Division Championship, and maybe eventually the tag titles tied up in this as well, because Motor City is going for the tag titles eventually down the line. So we could have double chance. It's fantastic the way they're doing, because I think Impact has shown they don't need the crutch of having a championship to build a program. So it wouldn't shock me to see them kind of tie these things together and weave a tapestry of creative minds of having all these guys involved, because there's a lot of players here. If you put the kind of the roadmap on the, one of those things like Charlie Day and Always Sunny, where he's putting all the red wires together and connecting things, Impact, everything's connected at this point. The Knockouts division, everyone feels like they're intertwined in the best way possible. Nothing is happening on an island here on Impact. And that's a huge credit to them, because it's very easy to just be like, this is our main event segment. We're going to work on Shelley and Aldis and let them live by themselves over here. They're tying in mid-card stuff and X Division stuff and other things into this, that it has more than just this immediate in 2 weeks for Slammiversary. This goes well beyond this. This is thinking bigger picture.
Dude, how fitting that our background up here is kind of the red webs connecting each other up
probably
here, man.
Subconsciously,
Yeah.
it's in my head but man, I can't say enough good things about this. As far as a go home show for a Down Under tour, uh, those international tours, and I think WWE and AEW have shown that these international crowds can be absolutely the best reactions you can get and take matches to the next level. And don't forget, we saw rumors that WWE wants to run a big PLE in Australia. So this might be one of those precursors to kind of take the temperature, how they handle having this crowd here. And I fully expect Wagga Wagga to be absolutely jam-packed and ready for this. And at the very least, they're going to use this as a barometer to getting future shows. And it wouldn't shock me to see WWE go there or even AEW down the line. You mentioned it being expensive, but if they show out here and they create an environment that's special, like the Puerto Rico crowd, like the London crowd we're going to get this weekend for Money in the Bank, it's possible that other companies are going to follow suit and want to work Australia.
Yeah, man, and I have no doubt that the Australian fans are going to show out, especially considering that they don't get a whole lot of wrestling over there. I mean, they do have, World Series wrestling is a pretty good size, promotion that's local to Australia. I think they're going to show out, and I think they're going to be a rowdy bunch of fans.
So like you said, we're going to be talking about all the happenings of the Down Under Tour next week. We're going to break down all that stuff for you Friday, 6:30, and see if Alex Shelley walks out with the championship. I think we're both in agreement he will. If anything changes with the Knockouts championship, what's going to happen with the tag titles? And most importantly for me, what does it look like on the Australian side of things is like production. I'm looking more of that kind of thing because, everyone talks about what AEW is doing, what WWE is doing. This is a huge thing for professional wrestling that Australia is being run as a major show over the course of 2 nights. This is, Impact again, setting the standard and everyone is keeping pace with them. And everyone's going to talk about the 2 bigger promotions, but don't forget it happened here first. Eventually when WWE goes there and everyone wants to laud and herald them with all this applause, don't forget that Impact took the risk first. And all these Canadian shows they're running too. We want to mention that on Impact side. Just really identifying their core audience and finding these great venues to host their shows and create an aesthetic. Like I go back to even Rebellion and these other shows they've been running. It's just it's been fun to watch Impact lean into who they are instead of kind of going against the grain of who they're not.
Yeah, 100%, man. They do a great job of leaning in, and they're charging forward. I mean, without any fear, which I think is just it speaks volumes of the way that they do business.
Absolutely. And with that being said, let's get into the impactful moment of the week and talk about our favorite match or segment of this week on Access.
Impactful.
All right, my Kentucky Waterfall friend, what was your favorite match or segment of this week from Impact on Access? What'd you walk away kind of most captivated by?
This was an incredible show, man. I think there's plenty of options for a favorite match or moment, but for me, it was the Joe Hendry music video. It got me hands down. It really got a hold of me, man. The stripper Kenny, the story development they had there, because we got breadcrumbs of it last week when Kenny walked into the ring and handed Joe his title after his match. Joe really put the ball back in his court here, man, and took back control. And I love Joe Hendry, and I thought this was just, like I said, peak professional wrestling.
Long reign Joe Hendry. I hope he doesn't lose that digital media championship anytime soon. I have to go myself, even though it was an extended squash match. I got to go with the debut of Leo Rush. I really was so impressed with what he did here with the limited amount of time they gave him. As I mentioned before, a squash match, was able to get all his stuff in and be memorable, and just how fast that guy moves, and just shows he's on a different level. And he's been quietly honing his craft pretty much out of the sight of the main sort of eye of WWE fans, AEW fans. Like, he's been doing his stuff in New Japan Pro Wrestling on the independents, and you could tell that he hasn't lost a step, and he's going to be a guy that Impact builds around. And on top of it, setting the stage with this Chris Sabin feud for Slammiversary and getting involved and kind of pushing himself in the main event scene with Shelley and Aldis and getting involved with big eyes and big stakes in this final segment. And Leo Rush is going to be a player for Impact Wrestling. And what a great, great signing for him to be here. It's great to see him here on this roster. It just makes a very dynamic, as we used that word before, and plentiful roster that is, as I said, I'll say it every day, that this roster is one of the best rosters, if not the best roster, bang for your buck, than any wrestling roster that is currently out there, fully constructed.
And it just continues to get better.
Absolutely. That's the other thing too. People, and again, we look back, you could look through the history of TNA, Impact, and go throughout all of what they've done and leaning on talent of talents past. And there are people on this roster that have done things elsewhere. But the main thing here is that they are really leaning on the good mix of veterans, young talent, and really emphasizing who they are and not so much saying this is what they achieved elsewhere. It's a different mindset that, again, we go back to it. I think the addition of AEW into the scene took the pressure off Impact to really have to be like, we want to fit into that number 2 slot and be WWE light. Once you pull them out of that vacuum and put them in a place where they can just really thrive creatively and be okay being number 3, we're seeing that right now, that they're able to put on quality programming without the worry of trying to keep up. Now they're running a race with themselves and competing with themselves to a point where it's exciting, man. Like Impact is, and no shit, like we're sitting here on the show, you and I'm just excited on a Thursday night to watch the product they're putting out there. And it's so much fun to consume because there's no one else doing what they're doing on a weekly basis.
No, man, it's consistent, it's unique, and like you said, man, they're not competing against anybody with themselves. So the fucking sky's the limit. And like I said, it just over the last 2 or 3 years, keeping up with it's just continued to get better, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Absolutely. With that being said, man, let's get to the shock and awe, give our final wrap up, and get some tavern hype in, talk about next week and all the things going on here at the Turnbuckle Tavern.
Shock and awe.
All right, Colton, as we say goodbye on a Thursday night here, let's get our shit in. Tell us about what's going on at Malt.Mania, what's going on at the malt competition. Were you on the debate this week? Let's get some tavern hype in.
Yeah, man. So I'm filling in for Chad on, well, I guess Chad's taking a break, so I was technically in the third square, even though Tom was there. So, but I'm third square, Tom's usual spot. But I'm on the debate as a co-host this week. Our guest was Billy Peck from the MWO. Man, this was a really fun one. I think that this was Billy's first time on the debate, I believe. Man, he was a great guest. He brought an awesome topic. We talked about something on debate we had never talked about before. It was we actually talked about WWECW, which was go back or be on the lookout for it on Monday. Check it out. It was a really good. It was a debate. It was a great conversation. It inspired me to go back and watch some of the WWECW, which I did not watch a ton of at the time. And as a fan of the original ECW, just kind of predisposed to having a bad taste of in my mouth over the concept of WWE presenting ECW. It was a good topic that he brought, man. So shout out to Billy. Loved having you on, man. We'll definitely have you on the debate going forward. Really good show all around. So that's gonna be on YouTube coming Sunday, and we'll audio drop on Monday on Apple and Spotify.
Did you guys talk about the mummy?
Did we talk? You mean the zombie?
Oh, now isn't there a mummy too?
I think it was. We talked about the zombie. I don't know if we talked about that. I don't remember. I don't recall talking about the mummy.
And I watched bits and pieces as well. Like I remember Big Show as ECW champion, and Mark Henry had the championship at some point, and Hardcore Holly, CM Punk, of course, his debut over there. But man, not great. WWE ECW wasn't great. Is it better than I remember? Is that what you're saying by watching it?
Well, I think what it is there's some gems there, and there's some cool things that happen, like you mentioned Punk's debut. Cardona and Brian Myers getting their start as Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, and whether they would have really even had a place to get that run without that. Kofi Kingston. There was some cool shit that happened, man. And I mean, I think if you take it at face value as, is it supposed to be ECW like we remember it? No, not necessarily by any means, but there was some cool stuff that happened. All in all, I think I had my opinion changed on it a little bit. We also talk about just the state of the AEW women's division and what changes we'd like to see to kind of to steer that ship in a better direction. Like I said, it was a great debate. Always love being on the debate show. Not sure if I'm on week after or not yet. We'll find out. I'll let you guys know next week.
So as far as you are correct, the zombie was from WWE ECW. The mummy is from old school WCW. So I'm pretty sure the Mummy was Giant Gonzalez, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh
So
shit.
yeah, I'm pretty sure if I'm
That's a big mummy.
big ass mummy. But so on my end, we have the finale tomorrow. Shot Nostalgia season 3, WF 1998. We have 2 episodes of Raw to cover and 1 newsletter, and that's it. We say goodbye to 1998. Mike and I, believe it or not, went 2 hours talking about 2 episodes of Raw. I think we were just more waxing poetic about the journey we went on, talk about superlatives and awards and things that we thought were the best and were the worst of 1998. And what a fun ride it was. So make sure you guys join us. If it's going to be video form, it'll be tomorrow night, 7 p.m. But if you're looking for audio, we'll drop on Saturday morning. So make sure you guys check it out. You don't want to miss it. It was a great conversation, but we also are looking forward to our first episode of Shot Nostalgia Season 4. Myself, Colton, and Mike will be joining you guys Friday night, same time slot, 7 p.m., talking about Smoky Mountain Wrestling 1994. Audio drop going to be still the same on Saturday. We're covering 2 months at a clip, 7 episodes. I think the last 2 episodes, November and December, but we're going to be covering January and February 1994, all the tapings. Sunday Bloody Sunday is their kind of their premium event that they have for that scope of time, January through February. A lot to be said with the newsletter. There's a lot to break down. It's going to look different, but most importantly, we're going to have a lot of fun talking about wrestling that both of us honestly didn't watch in succession. I think we've all seen bits and pieces of Smoky Mountain, but to watch it in a row, it's going to be an experience.
It is, and it has been, man. I've already been watching it, getting ready, and it's wrestling the way it used to be and the way you like it is the tagline. So good old fashioned wrestling, man. It's it's going to be a trip. What's up, Freems?
What up, Freems? Thank you for joining, man. I hope you're streaming Fight Forever, my man. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody's content for Fight Forever on the AEW side of things, whether it be the Switch or PS5 or Xbox, whatever. I've been enjoying all the screenshots, trying to get my hands on it myself. I got to get myself a Nintendo Switch to enjoy it. I have no console right now, so I have to get the console and then get the game. But to me, as a guy who's not like really playing a lot of video games, it at least has drawn my attention to want to get back in the game. And, you know, say what you will about the Fight Forever graphics or whatever, it has at least piqued my interest as a lapsed gamer.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I've got a PS4. I haven't downloaded it yet. I'm kind of waiting for the holiday weekend to come up to get myself in there. But I do have a friend who pre-ordered it for his PS5, and it became available to him at 9 a.m. on Wednesday. He took the day off, and he played it for at least 10 hours straight. I did not get a final count. So he said it's damn good.
The thing I really like about it, too, and I saw that, you know, I think everybody appreciates the 2K stuff with WWE, with the creative minds that create all these different creator wrestlers and all that stuff. I love the old school mentality of sitting and creating cause yourself, the creator wrestlers on the SmackDown vs. Raw, and being able to create your own characters. I like that they have that thing. So you can get the formulas online and create new guys. And I don't know, something fun about the old school nature of what the games used to be for WWF No Mercy, WrestleMania 2000, the WCW versus NWO Rampage game. Like I'm an old head though, so I wonder how it's going to take. And I think the new generation is going to really enjoy this game because we get so stuck on realism and graphics that it's about playability. Pick it up and play with your friends, grab a few beers with some pizza and, you know, turn where you can just beat the shit out of each other and hit some of the signature moves. And that barbed wire death match looks amazing. That's what it's about. It's about that, not that it looks, you can see the sweat droplets off their head. It's me about the playability.
Exactly. Yeah, looking forward to getting it in. So hopefully I'll get a couple reps on it by the time we circle back here next week. I'll have a review.
So, guys, make sure you guys check out the turnbuckletavern.com and make sure you guys follow, like, and subscribe on all these platforms. Check us out. Check out the flagship that dropped this morning. If you're listening tomorrow, yesterday morning, about AEW Dynamite. It was Hawk and Sneed. So hopefully next week we get the full crew of the Two Bad Chads back together and they just have the Call to Hawk segment. But we had 2 full spoonfuls of Hawk the last 2 weeks. I think it's the most Hawk we've gotten on the tavern in a very long time. But good stuff. They broke down Dynamite just the way you like it. And it was a good episode of stuff. And I think for the YouTube side of things are changing. I think I didn't see the listing yet, and I don't know exactly when they're posting it, but it seems like we're going to get a Dynamite and Collision breakdown for the wrap-up, potentially on Sunday before the debate. Is that what's happening?
That Sundays is what I had heard last. So, yeah, looking forward to that, man. Excited to add Collision to the mix there.
Yeah, so apologies to those that were looking for it last night. I know it's become a destination place for people, 10:30 p.m. on Wednesdays following Dynamite, and we were not there. So it is, Sundays, Freems is planning on being there as well. So we're going to get, the creaminess on a Sunday night. So the Tavern is extending all their programming to every night of the week. So this, we're going to make sure we get our Collision reactions in. You guys will hear Mike, Tom, and Freems getting in there talking about AEW Dynamite and Collisions, breaking down some things. So pumped up about that, man. And, make sure you guys, like I said, consuming all the stuff. Go back and check out Raw Down as well. They were talking about Money in the Bank. They are your de facto source of all things WWE. They'll break it down. I didn't get to listen yet because we were preparing for this show, but I'm pumped to listen to what they said, their predictions, and talk about Money in the Bank in London. So it's gonna be a good weekend of wrestling.
Hell yeah, man! It's gonna be packed.
Colton, I didn't hear you talk about the mullet stuff. I want to make sure we get that in here.
We're good. We're still leading up, man. We've still got another month before I start really getting in there and plugging. So we'll be plugging last week of July, early August. So yeah, no worries. Nothing new to report.
You let me know, and I'll put it on my Instagram. Make sure we get you all the votes. It would be like if we talked about it last week on Shot Nostalgia, or this week coming up about the Time magazine, where WWF had said we want Mick Foley to be Man of the Year, and he did that. He got over like 7 million votes from wrestling fans. So we're going to do that for Colton here in the Tavern.
Hell yeah, man! We're bringing Kentucky Waterfalls, bringing the trophy home this year. Let's do it.
Absolutely. We need a Kentucky Waterfall shirt, by the way. That's what we need right now. I will wear that proudly at all the independent wrestling bookings I have in the future. But that being said, guys, we appreciate you watching and listening. This has been a lot of fun. We'll be back next week with Brace for Impact and talking all things Impact Wrestling. We'll catch you guys next time.